Good morning, everyone. Hello, my dear students. Welcome to Lecture 3 in our Foundation of Economics. I'm Dr. Magda Mustafa Sadiq, Associate Professor of Applied Economics. I'm pleased to guide you through today's important topic, supply, which lies at the heart of how markets function and how resources are allocated efficiently. Understanding supply is fundamental to grasping the broader workings of economic systems. So in this lecture, we will explore the definition and law of supply, the determinants that affect supply, the difference between movement along the supply curve and a shift in the supply curve, and I will add some real-world examples to bring theory to life. Let us give a simplified definition. What do we mean by supply? Supply is the amount of a good or service that producers are willing and able to sell at different prices over a certain period of time. In other words, supply shows how much of a product a business is ready to sell when the market price changes. So what affects price? Supply. While price is the most important factor, supply also depends on other factors. And we are going to discuss these factors in the coming slides. The law of supply says that, according to the law of supply, as the price of a good increases, the quantity supplied also increases. And when the price falls, the quantity supplied decreases, assuming other factors remaining constant. And this is what we call in economics as a ceteris paribus. Ceteris paribus is a fundamental assumption in economics that assumes that only one factor is changing and the other factors are kept constant. So let us take a mango juice as a real-life example. Imagine you run a juice company. It costs you $8 to make one bottle of mango juice. So when the selling price is $9, your profit per bottle is $1. But if the price rises to $10, your profit becomes $2 per bottle. Naturally, you would want to make and sell more bottles when the price is $10 because you are making more money on each sale. This is the law of supply in action. Another example, a farmer's market. A farmer grows tomatoes. If the market price of tomato rises, the farmer is encouraged to plant and harvest more tomatoes next season because he can earn more revenue. But if prices fall, he might grow fewer tomatoes or switch to different crop. So supply is dynamic. It is driven not only by price, but also by the business environment and production cost. Understanding the law of supply helps economists and non-economists and business leaders to predict producer behavior and design better policies for business strategies. The law of supply states that all other factors being equal, as the price of a good or service increases, the quantity that producers are willing and able to supply also increases. And as the price decreases, the quantity supplied decreases. So this is a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. The key assumption here is that all other factors like technology, input prices, and government regulations remain constant. What we call, as I told you in the previous slide, ceteris paribus. So why does this happen? From the producer's point of view, higher prices mean higher potential profits. So more firms or individuals are motivated to produce and sell the product. Lower prices, on the other hand, reduce profit margins, so producers supply less. If the price of wheat increases due to global demand or a poor harvest in another country, farmers are more likely to plant more wheat next season to take advantage of the higher prices. If the price falls, they may reduce wheat production and shift to a more profitable crop like barley or vegetables, barley or vegetables. During peak hours, prices go up due to surge pricing. As the price rises, more drivers log into app and begin offering rides. That is an increase in quantity supplied. I took the example of Uber, for example. For the conclusion, the law of supply helps us understand producers' behavior. It shows how price signals work in a market economy, guiding producers on what, how much, and when to supply. Always remember, higher prices, higher supply, lower prices, lower supply, as long as other factors remain constant. So again, this image explains the law of supply. As the price decreases, the quantity supplied decreases. So this happens assuming all other factors remaining constant, as I told you many times during the last slides or the previous slides. So when the price of tomatoes goes down, farmers are discouraged to grow or supply more tomatoes in the next seasons. So farmers may shift to other crops to reduce the amount they plant next time. Also, if we take the example of Uber, that if the fares of Uber are too low, fewer drivers go online, this will reduce supply. Also, if the price increases, content supplied increases, price decreases, content supplied decreases. Understanding this principle helps us analyze producer behavior and market dynamics, which is essential, as I told you, in policy planning, business strategy, and development economics. A supply schedule is simply a table that shows how much of a good or service producers are willing and able to sell at different prices during a specific period of time. In simple terms, the higher the price, the more firms want to supply. The lower the price, the less they want to supply. This happens because higher prices make it more profitable for firms to produce and sell, as I told you. That is why the supply schedule usually shows positive relationship between price and quantity supplied. Look to this attached table here. The price of mobile phones, the quantity supplied from mobile phones. So if the price increases from 4 to 5, the quantity supplied from mobile phones increases also from 15 to 20. But if the price, but if the price goes down from 9 to 8, the quantity supplied goes down from 40 to 35. A supply curve is simply a graph that shows the relationship between the price of a good, that is situated in the vertical axis, and the quantity that producers are willing to supply over a specific period of time, and that is situated on the horizontal axis. So this is what we call the law of supply that is illustrated in this graph. As the price of the good increases, as shown in this graph, the quantity supplied also increases, all other factors are being equal. This means there is a positive relationship between price and quantity supplied, because higher prices give producers more incentive to produce and sell more. They can make higher profits. So the supply curve usually upward sloping curve from left to right. That is because as the price goes up, producers are willing to supply more units. So for example, if the market price of coffee is $2 per kilo, you might supply 100 kilos. But if the price rises to $5 per kilo, you are likely to supply 300 kilos. So your incentive to produce grows with the price, and the supply curve captures this behavior. So the supply curve only shows the effect of a price on quantity supplied, holding everything else constant like technology, input cost, or government policy. If any of those factors change, the whole supply curve may shift, but that is a topic that we are going to discuss in the coming slides. Therefore, as a conclusion, the supply curve shows how much producers are willing to sell at different prices. It's generally upward sloping. The higher the price, the greater the quantity supplied, because it becomes more profitable. So let us explore the main factors that affect the supply of goods and services in a market, known as the determinants of supply. These factors cause the supply curve to shift either to the right, increase in supply, or to the left, increase in supply. So let us go through them one by one with real life examples. Input prices or cost of production. When the price of inputs like labor, raw materials, or energy increases, it becomes more expensive to produce goods. As a result, firms may produce less, reducing supply. Technology. New technology improves efficiency. It allows firms to produce more with the same amount of resources, which lowers cost and increases supply. So when automated machines are introduced in bakeries, the same workers can produce double the bread in the same time. Supply of bread increases, shifting the supply curve to the right. Number of sellers, producers. The more producers in the market, the greater the total quantity of goods available, which increases supply. So if many farmers start growing strawberries due to high demand, the total supply of strawberries in the market increases. This causes the supply curve to shift to the right. Producers' expectations. If producers expect that prices will rise in the future, they might hold back some of their products now to sell later at higher prices. This reduces supply. If oil-producing countries expect crude oil prices to increase next month, they may reduce current production to maximize future profits. So this decreases current supply, shifting the curve to the left. Government policies, taxes, and subsidies. Taxes increase the cost of production and reduce supply. Subsidies reduce cost of and encourage more production, increasing supply. So each determinant change the conditions under which firms are willing and able to produce. This can enable us to analyze the market behavior, price trends, so we'll be able to design effective policies. Let us come to movement and shift along the supply curve. While price causes a movement along the supply curve, there are other factors called determinants of supply that can cause the entire supply curve to shift either to the right, increase in supply, or to the left, decrease in supply. I'm sorry. For example, input prices or cost of production. If the price of raw materials, labor, or energy goes up, it becomes more expensive to produce the product, so supply decreases, shift to the left. But if input cost falls, supply increases, shift to the right. So all the factors or the determinants of supply causes supply curve to shift either to the right or to the left. The difference between movement along the supply curve and shift to the supply curve is very crucial for analyzing how producers respond to various economic signals. So a movement along the supply curve happens only when the price of the good itself changes, while all other factors stay constant. As illustrated in this graph, that when the price increases or decreases, quantity supplied increases or decreases. So if the price increases, producers are willing to supply more, and if the price decreases, they supply less. This is due to the law of supply, which states that there is a direct relationship between price and quantity supplied. So if the price of tomatoes rises from $2 per kilo to $3 per kilo, you might supply more because it's now more profitable. So this change in quantity supplied is movement along the supply curve, not a shift. Shift of the supply curve. When we talk about the supply curve shifting, we mean that the entire relationship between price and quantity supplied changes. Not just moving along the supply curve, but the curve itself moving to the right, increase in supply, or to the left, decrease in supply. So let us focus in this slide on shift to the right, which means suppliers are willing and able to offer more goods at the same price. This can be for 4 reasons. Decrease in input cost. So if the cost of production of inputs like raw materials, labor, or energy decreases, it becomes cheaper for firms to produce more. So suppose a bakery used to buy flour at $5 per ton, and now it costs only $3. So the bakery can now produce more bread at the same cost. So they increase supply, shifting the supply curve to the right. Also, more productivity, technological improvement. An increase in productivity means more output from the same input. And this often happens due to better machines, tools, or production techniques, which lower the cost per unit. A farmer who starts using a new irrigation system that boosts crop yield without increasing water usage can now produce more corn from the same land, and this increases supply and the curve will shift to the right. Subsidies. Subsidies are financial support from the government. They reduce the effective cost of production for farms, encouraging them to increase supply. So if the government gives a subsidy to solar panel manufacturers, the firm can now produce panels at lower cost. As a result, more solar panels enter the market. Supply increases and shift right. Increase in number of suppliers. More suppliers entering the market increases total market supply because each one contributes their production to the total quantity offered. So, let us say new coffee producers enter the market due to rising demand. The overall supply of coffee increasing, shifting the supply curve to the right. Shift to the left. When we talk about shift to the left in the supply curve, we mean that producers are now willing and able to supply less quantity of a good or service at every price level than before. This is different from a movement along the curve which is caused by a change in price. A leftward shift means that the entire curve moves inward, reflecting a fall in supply. So increase in input cost becomes more expensive to produce goods. As a result, suppliers reduce the quantity they are willing to supply at every price. Also less productivity due to outdated technology, poor management, or lower skilled workers, which will lead to lower output. So, if a car manufacturing plant experiences machinery breakdown or labor strikes, its ability to produce cars declines, shifting the supply of cars to the left. Introduction of a tax. When the government imposes a new tax, like a production or sales tax, it increases the cost of doing business. This is discourage supply. So if a carbon tax is imposed on factories to reduce pollution, firms might find it costlier to produce goods like cement or steel, so it reduces their supply in the market. Decrease in the number of suppliers. If firms shut down or leave the market due to low profits, strict regulations, or natural disasters, the total market supply decreases. So during a financial crisis, many small electronics manufacturers might close due to high borrowing cost or low demand. With fewer suppliers, the total supply of electronics shift leftward. So less quantity supplied at every price level leads to supply curve shift less. So prices may rise if demand stays constant.